Let's turn now to the investigation. Officials say it's unusual for crude oil to burn so fiercely. So they're trying to determine what exactly was in those 72 tankers. As Bonnie Allen reports tonight, some experts say investigators also need to go to the source of the shipment in North Dakota.
Fresh Bakken crude, North Dakota.
This is the source, Bakken crude oil straight from the ground.
The stuff that goes in the air and what caused the explosion has already escaped. So this being the source material, we'll be able to tell a lot.
Scott Smith is a chemist who has responded to every major oil spill in the past decade. His business helps clean up contaminated water. He took samples in Lac-Megantic but wasn't satisfied. We found him in the Bakken oil field.
This oil is lighter and it's volatile. And the smell is still dizzying. I'm still a little bit dizzy from being around it. In my opinion, the investigation is incomplete until they actually go to the source.
Bakken oil is extracted through an elaborate drilling process called fracking. Water, sand, and chemicals are injected deep into the ground to blast through the rock, 2 or 3 kilometers down, where there are more gases in the earth. As for those chemicals that go into extracting Bakken crude, there are hundreds of them, some toxic, like benzene. But oil companies have fought to keep their cocktails a secret. Whatever goes in, Keith Stewart from Greenpeace has evidence of what comes out. A report filed by one oil company shows Bakken crude has 10 times as much benzene, a carcinogen and potentially explosive. And Stewart is also concerned about hydrogen sulfide, also found in Bakken crude.
And so when you put oil in these black tanker cars and move them across the country, you're warming them up, and you are shaking them like crazy. And I don't think anyone ever thought about that.
We reached out to the petroleum industry in North Dakota, but didn't get a response. Both Smith and Stewart say federal authorities need to investigate what's actually in Bakken crude, then determine what other regulations are necessary for the safe transportation by rail or pipeline. Bonnie Allen, CBC News, Regina.
Some have argued that pipelines are safer than trains for transporting crude. But today in Quebec City, the Prime Minister echoed those sentiments, one day after a massive pipeline proposal.
The absolute safest way to transport energy products is through pipelines. That's the safest way you can go.
Harper says all individual pipeline proposals will undergo rigorous review. Calgary-based TransCanada said yesterday it's moving forward with its Energy East pipeline, which would move crude from Alberta to Quebec and New Brunswick.
The mayor of Lac-Megantic officially declared a state of emergency today, which will allow the town to react and rebuild faster in this crisis. The mayor also said the amount of work ahead in her community is gigantic. But as the cleanup begins, it's not what's on the surface that may be the biggest concern. Thomas Daigle has that part of the story.
The water may be choppy, but usually that doesn't prevent these boats from hitting the lake. Tanker trucks signal a much bigger problem. 100,000 liters of oil spilled nearby. Officials believe they've largely contained the spill and recovered much of the crude, but this lake feeds into the Chaudière River, and downstream the sheen on the water is causing plenty of concern.
There's clearly oil coming downstream, and it appears as though there's an ongoing spill coming down here.
Scott Smith came from Massachusetts to see the river for himself. He's been to major oil spills across North America in recent years and says this orangey-brown liquid found in the water looks like a chemical used to disperse oil, something he's seen elsewhere.
Pour donner un coup de main aux sinistrés. Sa manière à lui de contribuer, c'est cette technologie qu'il a développée après le désastre de BP dans le golfe du Mexique en 2010.
I've been in every oil disaster since BP. When I read about this, we got in the car and drove, and my assistant Shane and I decided to drive up and volunteer our time.
Une ceinture faite de matériel qui absorbe le pétrole. Depuis leur arrivée à Lac-Megantic hier soir, Scott Smith et son employé s'affairent à déployer leurs barrières d'une rive à l'autre de la rivière Chaudière.
We came up and we wanted to quickly help the situation and volunteer and donate this product to try to get the oil out of the water.
Une fois imbibé de pétrole, on essore le tout et on répète l'opération. D'ailleurs, les traces d'hydrocarbures sont bien visibles du haut de ce pont qui enjambe la rivière.
The most important thing is to remove this oil before it goes downstream and gets in everyone's drinking water, because that current's moving so rapidly.
L'homme est ici à titre de bénévole. C'est la pire catastrophe écologique qu'il a vue depuis celle de BP. Plus de 100 000 litres de pétrole se sont déversés dans la rivière Chaudière. Quelques espèces mortes ont été retrouvées aux abords de la rivière Chaudière, mais pour l'instant, les autorités environnementales ne parlent pas de décès massifs. André Martin, TVA Nouvelles, à Québec.